In an era where local journalism is fighting for its life, the Baltimore Banner is writing a different story, one of growth, innovation, and impact. Launched just 2 years ago, this nonprofit digital newsroom now boasts the largest reporting staff in Maryland, has grown its subscriber base by double digits year over year, and is expanding. You heard that right, expanding coverage across the state, even into the shadows of Washington, D.C., and now has a new editorial leader at the helm. Hi, I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of EMP Magazine. This is EMP Reports, a weekly vodcast series that explores the people, organizations, and issues shaping the evolving news publishing industry. Today, with me is Audrey Cooper, who took over as EIC, editor-in-chief of the Banner, in late 2025, bringing with her national reputation for transforming newsrooms and making journalism not just sustainable, but powerful. From leading the San Francisco Chronicle through a digital and financial turnaround to pushing WNYC into its first ever Pulitzer finalist nod, Cooper has built a career in reimagining how journalism communicates and connects with its audience. I am so honored to have you here, Audrey. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for asking me.
Wow, I mean, I gotta say, you went from San Francisco, then you wind up at WNYC, and now you're in Baltimore. Where is home for you? Where did you?
Yeah, that I know my son wants to know when we're going to stop moving too. Where's home? Like originally
Yeah,
I grew up in Kansas City actually. But I we lived in San Francisco for 22 years, so that's probably the longest I've ever lived anywhere. But don't you think this country is so amazing? There's so many great cities in it.
oh,
I don't like to limit myself to just one place.
and think of all the different seafood you've had now from San Francisco to Baltimore, right? I mean,
Dude, nobody has had yet asked me in Baltimore which crab I prefer, and
I was about to
I
say,
prefer if they don't ask me that.
I mean, I lived in Maine where we had real lobster. Then I'm down in Tampa, and I could go on. But anyway, it's an honor. Today, we'll talk with Audrey about what's next for the Banner, why they're expanding, and how they're growing audience trust and engagement. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Walter Hussman. Our family has been in the news business for over 100 years. Journalism includes two parts, reporting the news and providing opinions. But in recent years, there's been too much opinion appearing in news reporting. This has eroded public trust in news reporting to the lowest level of any U.S. institution. To address this, we started a nonprofit, the Center for Integrity in News Reporting.
And now, through the CFINR Annual Journalism Awards, that mission is gaining momentum. With 6 categories and $150,000 in prizes, the awards recognize impartial and objective reporting rooted in facts, not spin. Winners will be honored at the 3rd Annual Awards Ceremony in Washington, D.C., joining a growing community committed to restoring trust in journalism. There's no entry fee, and submissions are open now through February 16th. Enter today at cfinr.org/award-entry and be part of the movement to rebuild trust one story at a time.
Audrey, let's start off with this. You led some of the country's most ambitious newsrooms, San Francisco Chronicle, NYC, and The Gothamist. I didn't mention it in the opening. What drew you to the Banner? Why Baltimore? Why now?
My whole career has been dedicated to local news. I think, there have been opportunities to get into national news, and I never took them because to me, it's not a secret. America is having a hard time having civic conversations right now. And I think the reason behind that is because of the shrinking local news ecosystem. And if we spent more time worrying about whether our kids are being educated, whether our roads are paved, whether our water is safe to drink, and less time about these national culture fights that, to be honest, don't affect our day-to-day lives, I think there's a chance that local news has to re-teach Americans how to have civic conversations. So to me, saving the great American experiment means saving local news. And I think it's difficult to find a place in America right now where that's not where Baltimore is like second to none. I mean, I think what's happening here and what the Banner is doing is the most interesting experiment in local news, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Saving the great American experiment. Saving is saving.
I know it's a
You,
little, as
you know,
my
but you
grandmother
you gave me my pull quote in the first sentence. There might be more to come, but thank you. That's
I
always
I I aim to please. My
I re-
grandmother, God rest her soul, would call it highfalutin, but I do believe that. I do believe it.
you are Midwestern, aren't you?
Yeah.
All right, so we had Stuart Bainham and Imtiaz Patel on the show at the beginning of the banner. You were our cover story. We showed the building under construction in a magazine. We had the original team on the cover. Then a year ago exactly, I had Bob Cohn on talking about where you were. Now it's a year later. When you got into that newsroom, what was the first impression you had of the staff when you arrived? What surprised you in a good, or I should say in a bad way, when you got there?
The reporters here told me we think this is journalism utopia. And I'm a cynical editor. This is my third newsroom to lead, so I'm like, okay, that seems kind of weird. And honestly, I think they're kind of right. The staff is incredibly kind. They are insanely talented. I would put them up against any group of journalists that I've ever had the pleasure of working with in terms of talent and ambition. And they love Baltimore and Maryland in a way that I think also informs our coverage. Even when we do critical stories, it's told with a love of this region that I think is the most beautiful thing and one of the secrets to the banner's success, to be honest with you.
All right, but okay, so I love that region, but let's define it now. I had Bob Cohn on this show I told you a year ago, and his exact words were Baltimore. I'm quoting him. Baltimore is the soul of our journalism. And I'm not against expansion. I mean, we're watching it at the Boston Globe. We're watching it down at the Post and Courier, watching it at the Advocate, and they're doing it wisely. Are you Baltimore? Are you Maryland? What is all this now into Montgomery County? How big are you planning to become?
Yes, we are all of those things. We're based here in Baltimore. It is the soul of what we do. And as you mentioned, about less than 3 months ago, we launched a newsroom in Montgomery County. For everybody who's watching this that doesn't really understand Maryland geography, Montgomery County is much closer to DC, and it's culturally much different than Baltimore. So it poses interesting challenges and opportunities for our coverage. But even though it is a stone's throw from the nation's capital, Montgomery County is a news desert. And it's also part of our state. So I think, one of the things about local news that I think Stuart and Bob get that I was very attracted to is that they understand to have impact in your journalism, you have to have scale. And I think, if I was going to say anything controversial that'll make people want to debate in this interview, I don't believe local news will be as effective as it could be without scale. And the way to get scale is geographic growth, and it will also help our bottom line. We have a newsroom of almost 100 journalists. We need to be able to grow to support that. That's just the basic economics.
So let's dive into the economics. A year ago, I keep quoting Bob to you. I hope you don't mind,
He
but
quotes himself to me too.
no, I'm going to say it. He gave me great. Here was the pull quote, then one from the show that I have referred to in many other shows. His exact words, and maybe he's used it in meetings with you. We have a nonprofit heart with a for-profit brain.
I
And,
love that.
and one of my closest friends is Rich Homburg now, that is crushing it up at Detroit PBS. He comes from CBS News in New York radio. In other words, not looking at the nonprofit world as just this, oh, da, 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 like it was Imtiaz Patel on a stage. I interviewed him at a conference a year and a half ago. He said, when I took over the banner and I was building it, I fired someone. And someone said, came in my mouth, you can't fire someone. We're a nonprofit. Do you see yourself as a for-profit company, a nonprofit company? What is the ethos of how you operate daily? Because you just talked about scale, you talked about making money, but you are a nonprofit entity. Talk to me.
Well, I also said to make a difference, you have to have those things. So I think, that is the business is supporting the journalism, right? And we have to be business savvy in order to do the journalism that we think is important, of course. But look, my first newsroom was for a very for-profit company, privately held, Hearst Corporation, and you were expected to grow the business every year and to grow profits. Like that's part of what healthy for-profit businesses do. And then that pendulum in my career swung the entire different direction into public radio. And there, I think, there were a lot of people who said, as long as as long as the mission is, you know, appeased, as long as we're doing the mission, like who cares about the finances? And the truth is, like, that's also not sustainable. So I think the Banner has the best of both worlds. It is it, to me, the thing that's so great about a for-profit company is you have to be so audience centric in order to succeed that you actually do serve your audiences better. The best thing about a nonprofit is that you're not making money for the sake of making money and making shareholders richer. And we have this best of both worlds. We have a very audience centric approach to things, but we also, as long as we're breaking even, we're going to be able to put that money back into great journalism.
All right, I want to ask you a question about newsroom philosophy. Tao Diaz, who used to be at the Google News Initiative, now works at one of our marketing partners. I had him on a very controversial webinar where he screamed at my audience, and boy, you should have seen the chat go nuts, that you must publish 15 stories a day in order to be in the game today. And that's what's pushing, using AI more, possibly, not being as I don't want to say circumspect, but maybe having your newsroom post more that you curate versus investigative. You and I both know enterprise journalism, investigative reporting takes time, it takes energy. How nerdy are you? Are you looking for the clicks sometimes? Are you looking for the engagement numbers? Are you truly building a newsroom that wants to do investigative journalism? Are you doing both? Where's your head as you advance the Banner brand into the years and decades that come?
Um, well, I mean, you know the answer to this. The answer is you have to do both. And I think the Banner, just today we had an independent investigation into a mega church in East Baltimore that the Banner wrote about a year and a half ago. They came out with a 172-page report into what we exposed, which was allegations of widespread sexual abuse at this mega church. And this 172-page report 30 times references the Banner's work and says none of this would have come to light if it wasn't for it. That is journalism that saved people's lives. And that's why we do this work. We were a Pulitzer finalist this year, one of the youngest news organizations ever awarded a Pulitzer for our work into the opioid crisis. That is, you cannot throw a rock in this newsroom and not hit somebody who wants to do the big investigative story. But that isn't all people expect of us. We are looking to be the primary news source for people in Baltimore and Maryland, and that means we have to reflect the news of the day too. So you have to do both. I mean, it's not what anybody wants to hear, but I don't know that I agree that 15 is a magical number. I think it depends on your outlet. We publish many more stories a day than that. Um, but mostly you have to do stuff that your audience sees themselves in and that they care about.
You just talked about an amazing piece of journalism, but you're behind a paywall. First of all, congratulations. 55,000 paid subscribers is an amazing number for the Banner. But that's just 10% of Baltimore's population, not counting the statewide expansion. How do you feel about journalism behind paywalls? Do you think we should be releasing more when we have to in order to have that influence on our society? Or are you comfortable with that being where you're at today at the Banner?
Well, first of all, we're going to have 75,000 by the time audiences see this. So that's number one. The second is we have a metered paywall, so like you'll be able to get something. We also give free access through the library systems in Maryland. All of the big ones that serve our audiences in the counties that we're in. So and we also have a number of large institutions we partner with for enterprise access. So yes, it is behind a paywall. I believe that if you're doing something that people value, then they should pay for it. And more importantly, I don't think there's another way to do it. And what I get very frustrated about, honestly, Mike, is nonprofit journalism leaders who say you just have to be niche. We have to have tiny newsrooms because that's all that we can sustain and that's the future. I think that's giving up on scale. I just, politicians, public officials now, they're too hard to shame because we don't have enough scale. And they think they can ignore us and they can mess with our credentials and they cannot let us into public meetings and they cannot give us public documents. And that's because we've given up scale. So I'm not ready. And I don't think I will retire
Hmm.
before I ever say we should give up on scale. I don't think we have to. And to do that, we need to have support of our readers.
You go. All right, final question. For some reason, we always kick off the new year with an interview with the Banner. So I don't know why. Here we are, brand
I
new.
think it's a brilliant idea.
We love the Banner. We're constantly reporting on it. Final question. A year from now, where do you want to be talking about the editorial goals? Because that's your purview for the Banner. What is your goal 1 year from today? What metric will you be looking at, or what do you hope to accomplish when we re-interview 1 year from today?
I'm glad you asked. Like just yesterday, we had my first real newsroom meeting where I told them like these are my priorities for 2006, and it starts with doing journalism that has impact. It starts with growing our audience. It starts with being innovative and pushing innovative ideas. We have a lot of experiments with machine learning happening right now. I want to come up with new ways of covering old beats. We shouldn't have the same approach newspapers have had for 100 years as a digital operation. And we want to build a culture for news that's going to sustain us for the future. And I think if you can do that, the impact, the attracting audience, the being innovative and having a healthy newsroom culture, what I hope is that the Banner is able to inspire similar experiments across the country and show how it can be done and how we can really save local news at scale.
And now at corrected 75,000 paid subscribers. One hell of a number. Audra Cooper, recently appointed editor-in-chief of the Baltimore Banner. An honor to have you on the show as we look into a new year. We wish you well. Please stay in touch with us and keep us up to date what you're up to.
Oh, we will. Thank you for asking.